Did you know that the right furniture could give you up to 25 more minutes of escape time in a house fire? Your average couch or sofa with flame retardant chemicals inside can go up in flames in less than 5 minutes, making an escape difficult, if not impossible. Less combustible furniture, on the other hand, can take up to half an hour to be fully engulfed, giving you and your family valuable escape time. To better understand the role that furniture and flame retardants plays in house fires, Rebecca Edwards sat down with Dr. Marilyn Black of Underwriters Laboratories and their research division, Chemical Insights. Dr. Black helped us understand the false sense of security that we get from flame retardants and what we can do to buy that extra valuable time to escape in a house fire.
Dr. Marilyn Black is the Vice President and Senior Technical Advisor for Underwriter Laboratories, and she is currently heading several research projects covering everything from 3D printing and vaping to air quality and the use of fire retardant chemicals, which is what we're going to talk about today. Chemical Insights is a nonprofit that works with UL to examine the impact of chemicals on public health and safety. And most recently, the group has paired with fire experts, furniture manufacturers, medical experts, chemists, and more to test methods for slowing down fires without the use of chemical flame retardants. And those actually tend to do more harm than good in a fire. Who knew? Dr. Black, Marilyn, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today about this really interesting and very important subject. If you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the things that you're doing to help keep us all a little bit safer in our homes.
Well, thank you very much for having me this morning. I'm delighted to be here. And so I have been involved in indoor air quality, the hazards of indoor air quality for about 35 to 40 years, working on understanding what's in the air that could be potentially posing a health hazard and what that's coming from and what we might do to reduce our human health risk. I kind of think of myself as a mother scientist. I have 4 children of my own. I've always been very interested in environmental exposure and what children in particular are being exposed to, because once they start when they're young, that's a lifetime event, and what we might do to reduce that exposure. Yeah, so currently I am with Underwriters Laboratories, Chemical Insights. We are a very specific institute focused on studying primarily by research environmental hazards of all type, including the flame retardant flammability project that we're talking about today.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You guys, the videos and the things, the information that you shared is so insightful. And I have to say that I never thought about my furniture being a potentially extra hazard or a danger if I had a house fire. So, which is kind of weird because I guess everything that could catch fire is timber, I suppose, in that situation. But it was really surprising to learn the impact that the type of furniture, type of products and fabrics that you have in your home can make a huge difference. Can you tell us a little bit more about that issue in particular?
Yeah, well, upholstered furniture has always been a main staple in our homes. We primarily find it in our living areas and our bedrooms. And it was probably about 8 to 10 years ago when there was a real concern raised on flame retardant chemicals that were being used in the polyurethane foam that was making the cushion seating and backing of our upholstered furniture. And the concern that these flame retardants were potentially hazardous to health, but used pretty prolifically in our upholstered furniture. And there was a lot of research showing that flame retardants were being found, especially ones that we called organohalogen flame retardants, were being found in human bodies. They were being found in our children's bodies. They were being found in mother's milk. They were being found in cord blood of babies. And so the scientists that were studying those particular chemicals learned that they're not necessarily good chemicals, that they can really, and depending on the specific chemicals, result in cancer sort of effects or even mental and physical development in children. So there was a big push to try to remove flame retardants from furniture. And we became interested in this topic because as a safety science company, we're interested in the overall safety of products. And the question came up of, well, how can we have fire safe and chemical safe products? Because if we remove the flame retardants, we may increase the risk of fire, which is can be very damaging.
I mean, we think we're doing the right thing for our family. We want to buy stuff that has the flame retardant things. I remember putting my kids in flame retardant pajamas even, and now I feel terrified that happened. Is there anything as a safe flame retardant? Is there anything that's better than another?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think I'd like to give you a few statistics, Rebecca, because a lot of people don't think about fires in their homes anymore. I think it's one of those things they feel like they've put fire alarms in and smoke detectors, and maybe they're protected. But in reality, we have about 350,000 residential fires on a daily basis, and resulting in about 2,600 deaths. And most of those deaths occur in fires related to upholstered furniture. If you have a flaming fire, the upholstered furniture is the first thing to catch fire, and it burns pretty prolifically and spreads through the house. So fire needs to be concerned as a real safety issue for people overall. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. Taking the flame retardants out is great, but let's don't overlook this other major hazard. So, but flame retardants in general were added to the furniture initially to resist the furniture from igniting or spreading the fire rapidly. And when we take those flame retardants out, that safety factor goes away.
I comb headlines for all the bad news all the time to look for ways, how are we being safe and how are we not being safe? And there are lots of fire comes up more often than you expect, and people dying in house fires. And you do feel like that seems like, for some reason, it feels like it's an old-fashioned problem, but it absolutely is not. First of all, how much more dangerous is it when we take the flame retardants out? And what are other options that could replace the flame retardants? Is that accurate?
Right. Yeah, no, that's accurate. So when we realized this issue was developing in the marketplace, we brought together all of the various stakeholders, the chemical manufacturers that make the flame retardants, the furniture manufacturers, the public health professionals, medical doctors, designers, all of those people together. And, how can we address this issue? Because we want fire safe, chemical safe products in the marketplace. And so when we brought them all together and talked about what information we had, we realized that we had a lot of secondary information knowing that flame retardants were everywhere, but we didn't understand how they were getting there, if they were in the furniture, how they were getting out, if that's the way people were getting exposed, et cetera. And we didn't really know whether we needed those flame retardants in there and how much of those flame retardants we needed. So anyway, we thought, well, this is a great opportunity for us to conduct some research to understand this issue. So we set out to make furniture using different techniques. We made furniture with and without flame retardants. We made furniture with some new chemistry flame retardants that we're developing. They're called green chemistry flame retardants. And these are flame retardants that supposedly are used in the furniture, but they can't migrate out. So they can't present an exposure to people when they're using the furniture. And then we built furniture using what we call a barrier material. We took all of the flame retardants out and we used a fine textile barrier that's placed between the polyurethane cushioning and the external textile. And it is there by nature of the materials and the weave, they essentially are resistant to fire. So we made the furniture a type of furniture using all those techniques. And then once we had it, we did various studies to look at what sort of chemical exposure a consumer would get if they're sitting in that chair, and also how would the chair burn. And so that research took us a couple of years to really make all that furniture and conduct all those studies, but we learned a lot of phenomenal information that wasn't out there. First of all, we learned that if there are flame retardants used in the furniture, you will get exposed. They do come out. They come out in the air. They also come out in what we call settled dust. They get on the dust that comes off of the furniture, or if there's other dust, the flame retardants can latch onto it, and then they settle to the ground. And that's a problem because children in particular are close to the ground. They put their hands on everything, and then their hands go to their mouth. So they get a lot of exposure to flame retardants that way. Secondly, we learned that it really didn't seem to matter whether flame retardants were in the foam or not. The chairs burn similarly. And so I said, okay, well, if that's the case, maybe we don't need to add these flame retardants. And then the third thing we learned, which was the most phenomenal of all, was that if we use this barrier material instead of any chemical flame retardant or no flame retardants, that the chair basically did not burn. It was hard to get the chair to burn at all. All of the chairs burned up within minutes. I mean, went from being a chair to being a pile of ashes in less than 10 minutes. Whereas if you made a chair with a fire barrier, that chair never really flamed out. It just had a very slow burn along the fabric. And, we went out to 30 to 40, 45 minutes and finally just extinguished it, but it never burned up like the others. And a pretty dramatic difference.
Wow. That is very dramatic. That's incredible. What a wonderful discovery that you figured out something that's safer. Holy moly. So is this something that is going to be hitting the marketplace? Like, is this something that's going to be changing the way furniture is manufactured? And like, I can only imagine, like, how many years does it take to turn the ship a different direction when you're, talking about such a huge industry? Right.
Well, as I said, this issue has been around for a while, so everyone's been thinking about it, including the furniture manufacturers. And in the United States, most furniture manufacturers are moving toward reduce or taking out the flame retardants. They're doing that now, but without any concern over the fire element, right? But what we learned in the research is that there are manufacturers that make furniture with the fire barrier now, but you have to ask for it. They don't publicly market it yet because it's not commonly known, commonly requested, commonly accepted. So we're out to educate the public to ask for it. So many of them offer it. They may have to pay a little bit more for it. Because that's added safety feature that's not the norm yet. But in addition to that, we believe that many more manufacturers will be moving toward evaluating the use of these fire barriers in their products, and will begin to more openly market them in the marketplace.
Like, is there any way that, you like walk into your furniture store and say, I want to know, like, I'm looking for furniture that has fire barriers instead of flame retardant, maybe, and then I guess that's their job to know the difference. You'd think if you get the word out, like you're talking about, this could be a real big competitive advantage. I always thinking of the marketing headspace a little bit. Are there companies that are making, I don't want you to like endorse a company, but if I was going to like Google, furniture with fire barriers, do you think, is that information out there? Would that be like, I could pick a brand that I know, like La-Z-Boy is doing it?
I haven't done that, but I know that the brand that we used in our furniture study, we actually went and found a brand that was available, and we found the furniture with the barrier online, and it was in their online store. So I think if you go looking for it, you can probably find it. But if you walk into a furniture store, it takes a long time to get those sales reps on site, et cetera, educated on these topics. And many of them will probably tell you that they have furniture without flame retardants, because in the state of California, they started labeling their furniture if it did not have flame retardants, so that manufacturers could have that option. The typical store person's not going to be able to say, well, this has a barrier or not, but they can get back to the manufacturer and get that information. There's certain areas of the home that I think, are really optimum for barrier chairs. And it might be something like a baby nursery. All young parents today are very excited about their nursery and having it the safest that they can. They want to get rid of the chemicals, use low emission products, et cetera. But they all are putting a nursery chair in there, a nice stuffed upholstered furniture. And that's a special place and somewhere where, they really might want to consider it. And also there are other bedrooms that are closed and, tight.
Are there certain rooms in the house, other than the kitchen, that tend to be the center for fires?
Well, I talked about there being around 2,600 deaths per year, and 50% of those deaths are in the living room and bedroom. And we believe that obviously in those particular areas, you have a higher density of upholstered furniture that can catch fire and the fire can move rapidly through them. These are some statistics we like to provide. Typically in a home today, we use a lot of synthetic materials to build, construct, furnish, and those synthetics burn very rapidly. And so if you have a flaming fire in your home today, you have less than 5 minutes to get out of it before it becomes a situation where you're overcome either with the toxic smoke or the fire takes over. 20 to 30 years ago, we used a lot more natural products. We used a lot of cotton and silks and things like that. And the equivalent time then was about 30 minutes. You had about 30 minutes to escape from your home. So we've kind of created this issue with a lot of the new materials. Plus, we have a lot of open areas where we like a lot of space, a lot of openness. And so that allows the airflow to move through those areas rapidly too, which also contributes to the rapid increase in movement of fire. So we've kind of, by nature, the environments that we like, we've kind of added fuel to the fire, I guess, in a way. And we need to think about that.
Well, yeah, because you're always told to sleep with your bedroom door closed, because that's another barrier you have if there's a fire. And in open concept homes, there are no doors to close. That makes total sense. Wow.
Right.
That's so crazy. Is there anything else that you think people could do to buy more time in the case of a fire breaking out?
Well, they're the traditional, approaches that we're taking today with smoke detectors and fire alarms, carbon monoxide monitors, which are given. Everyone should have those because they do give you early warning. The other, and you mentioned it, we have a close your door campaign that really goes to, if you are sleeping in a bedroom, close your door, because that does provide an extra barrier and give you more time to escape from a fire that originates somewhere else during the evening. But the only last thing would be to have sprinklers in your home, but that's a pretty expensive approach. So, and not the norm in general for residential homes. So the best thing is to choose your products carefully and do everything you can to make sure you cover that fire aspect as well.
Wow. Well, this has been so enlightening, so interesting. And I have to say, I'm looking at everything a lot differently since I've learned more about this. It's crazy because my whole life is dedicated to safety and security and different things. And this was a complete blind spot. And it's got to be for most of us. So I think it's so important, the work that you're doing. And is there anything else that you think people need to know before we go?
No, I would like to mention that we have produced a tool, what we call a toolkit on this topic.
Yes.
If you go to our website, which is chemicalinsights.org, you will find all of our materials on this topic there. But we produced what we call a toolkit, which kind of consolidates all of the science information we have and brings it down to a practical application. And it really gives you the basics on, why flame retardants are an issue, why fire is an issue, but then gives you kind of a matrix, a decision tree that lets you walk through it. I'm concerned about I'm concerned about chemical risk. I'm concerned about fire risk. I'm concerned about both. And what can I do? And how do I select the right chair? And it'll walk you through it and give you a scale from red to green, depending on, where you are and your personal objectives, and help you ask the right questions when you're specifying or purchasing a chair, and make sure you achieve what you want for you and your family.
Dr. Black, Marilyn, thank you so much. This was fantastic. And I hope that we get to talk to you again, because you have so much experience and helpful insights into all sorts of lurking dangers that are just in the world and environment around us that we don't necessarily realize. And I think we have a lot to learn to help keep our families and our pets and our homes safer. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Smoke alarms and fire retardant furniture can make house fires feel like a problem of the past. But as Dr. Black pointed out, there are over 353,000 house fires every year. That's almost 1,000 fires per day in the US. But thankfully, we're not helpless. There are things that you can do to make your house a little safer from fires. We've dropped a couple links in the description below. Check those out. One of those is to the Chemical Insights Toolkit if you want to learn more about the safe furniture and fire barriers Dr. Black mentioned in the interview. We also have the House Fire Safety Guide on safewise.com dropped down there too if you want to learn more. And don't forget to follow us here on YouTube for all the latest safety news, or find us on any of these social channels. Until next time, check those smoke alarm batteries, sleep with the doors closed, and review your family escape plan. Until then, thanks for watching and stay safe.